100 years ago, on a Sunday morning, the acrid smell of funeral pyres once again greeted the inhabitants of Amritsar. This morning, however, the dead could be counted in the hundreds. Lal Chand was among the hundreds of grieving families who were cremating their relatives at the Hindu Durjana temple, just outside the Logar gate. There was nobody present there to register the number of the dead persons. Within 1 hour of our arrival in Durjana, about 70 more dead bodies came for cremation, and others were following. At the Sultan Wind Gate, a local villager observed the constant stream of corpses being taken to the Muslim burial ground outside the city for an hour and a half. By nightfall, bodies were still being removed from Jalian Bhag. It was thus, Girdhari Lal noted laconically, that the people of Amritsar held their Baishagi fair. This well, located inside the premises of the Jallianwala Bagh, stands testimony to the brutal killings of innocent, who jumped into it in panic, to save themselves from the firing. 120 dead bodies were later recovered from the well. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre, the shameful scar on British Indian history. It was a Saturday evening, on April 13, 1919. A large, but peaceful crowd had gathered at the Jallianwala Bagh, in Punjab, to celebrate their Baishagi fair. There was only a narrow gate exit. An hour after the meeting began, as scheduled at 17:30, Colonel Dyer arrived at the Bagh, with a group of 90 soldiers. 50 of them were armed with .303 Lee Enfield bolt-action rifles. He had also brought 2 armored cars, armed with machine guns. The vehicles were left outside, as they were unable to enter the Bagh through the narrow entrances. The Jallianwala Bagh was surrounded on all sides by houses and buildings, and had only 5 narrow entrances, most kept permanently locked. The main entrance was relatively wide, but was guarded heavily by the troops, backed by the armored vehicles. Dyer, without warning the crowd to disperse, blocked the main exits. He stated later that this act was not to disperse the meeting, but to punish the Indians for disobedience. Dyer ordered his troops to begin shooting toward the densest sections of the crowd, in front of the available narrow exits, where panicked crowds were trying to leave the Bagh. Firing continued for approximately 10 minutes. Ceasefire was ordered only when ammunition supplies were almost exhausted, after approximately 1,650 rounds were spent. Apart from the many deaths directly from the shooting, a number of people died of crushing in the stampedes, at the narrow gates, or by jumping into the solitary well on the compound to escape the shooting. A plaque, placed at the site after independence, states that 120 bodies were removed from the well. The wounded could not be moved from where they had fallen, as a curfew was declared, and more who had been injured than died during the night. While the British authorities in Amritsar and Lahore had been busy throughout the night, the dead remained abandoned and exposed inside Jallianwala Bagh. One woman, however, had refused to leave her husband's corpse despite the curfew. Like so many others, Rathan Devi had rushed to the Bagh to look for a relative, but by the time she found her husband, in a heap of bodies on the blood-soaked ground, there was no one to help her carry him away. Alone in the dark, Rathan Devi pleaded with people in the surrounding houses, but no one came to her aid. And so she spent the night by the side of her husband's corpse, in what had become a garden of the dead. I found a bamboo stick which I kept in my hand, to keep off dogs. I saw 3 men writhing in agony, a buffalo struggling in great pain, and a boy, about 12 years old, in agony entreated me not to leave the place. I told him that I could not go anywhere, leaving the dead body of my husband. I asked him if he wanted any wrap, and if he was feeling cold, I could spread it over him. He asked for water, but water could not be procured at that place. Finally, as the sun rose early next morning, Rathan Devi's friends came and helped carry her husband's body home. She finished her mournful story. I saw other people at the Bagh, in search of their relatives. I passed my whole night there. It is impossible for me to describe what I felt. Heaps of dead bodies lay there, some on their backs, and some with their faces upturned. A number of them were poor innocent children. I shall never forget the sight. I was all alone the whole night, in that solitary jungle. Nothing but the barking of dogs, or the braying of donkeys was audible. Amidst hundreds of corpses, I passed my night, crying and watching. I cannot say more. What I experienced that night is known to me and to God. Reaction in Britain to the massacre was mixed. Many condemned Dyer's actions, including Sir Winston Churchill, then Secretary of War, in a speech to the House of Commons in 1920. But the House of Lords praised Dyer, and gave him a sword inscribed with the motto, "Saviour of the Punjab." In addition, a large fund was raised by Dyer's sympathizers, and presented to him.